Today, this round table conference revolves around an interesting issue, which is homelessness in Morocco. Besides street children, this category of children who has invaded the streets of our cities. Now I'm going to give the word to Nisreen Sadiq.
Homelessness means an individual who lacks fixed, regular and adequate nighttime residence. So, homelessness remains a national and international concern, particularly in urban areas, for the 21st century. The number of homeless people in Morocco slightly decreased from 7,308 people in 2004 to 7,226 in 2014. That's dropped 1.1%, said the High Planning Commission HCP and the World Habitat Day 2017.
Our grandmothers said that in their good time they didn't have these frightening numbers of homeless people in the street. Thanks to the social solidarity, fraternity and generosity. But it is crystal clear that these social values are disappeared from our daily life. That's why our streets are invaded by the flood of homeless people. A land with the absence of shelters, centers and basic services which can help to reduce the suffering of this category of our society.
According to data from the 2014 General Census of Population and Housing, 89% of the homeless are based in 5 urban regions: the Greater Casablanca State with 23%, Tangier Tetouan Al Hoceima with 12.4%, Fes Meknes with 12.4%, the Eastern region with 12.4%, while the Marrakesh Safi and Souss Massa are in intermediate situation with 8.9% and 8% respectively.
Well, we can define homelessness as a broad form of poverty and an acute condition of residential instability. Homelessness is compounded by behavioral problems, mental health policy changes, disparities in health and healthcare, racial inequalities, and lack of social support.
People who experience homelessness are not distant or separate from the rest of the population. But in fact, the line between being housed and unhoused is quite fluid. Individuals and families who experience homelessness may not share much in common with each other, aside from the fact that they are extremely vulnerable and lack adequate housing and income and necessary support to answer to this housing.
This phenomenon has got several factors. Structural factors are economic and societal issues that affect opportunities and societal environments for individuals. Key factors can include the lack of adequate income, access to affordable housing and health support, and/or the experience of discrimination.
The second factor is homelessness and poverty are completely linked. People who are impoverished are frequently unable to pay for necessities such as housing, food, childcare, healthcare, and education. Poverty can mean a person is one illness, one accident, or one patient away from living on the streets. Individual and non-natural factors apply to the personal circumstances of a person experiencing homelessness and may include traumatic events, example, house fire or job loss, personal crisis, example, family breakup or domestic violence, mental health and addictions challenges, including brain injury and fetal alcohol syndrome, which can be both a cause and consequence of homelessness and physical health problems or disabilities.
I think that the lack of social support through jobs and marriage increases the use of drug and alcohol, and the erosion of low-income housing in the urban area. Therefore, homeless people have less access to housing, jobs, and healthcare, and mandatory things like food and clothing.
Isolation and lack of social support are well-documented aspects for homelessness, particularly for homeless people living with mental health or substance abuse disorders. Homeless women and men have been found to have significantly less family support than never homeless women and men. Disaffiliation from family often limits opportunities for recovery and prevention.
الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله ثم لا يتبعون ما أنفقوا منا ولا أذى لهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Those who spend their wealth in the way of Allah and don't follow up their spending by sensing their benevolence and true generous, will find their wealth secure with their Lord. They have no cause for fear and grief.
Each one of us has a good warm house to live in and family to take care for him. But others are deprived from these privileges and they are forced to live in the street, in the coldness, loneliness and darkness of the street. When the teenagers leave their home for one reason, surely they will fall in the darkness and hardships of the street. Why? I'll answer you. Because they have got no diploma, no experience. So it is impossible for them to get a job and to be able to have a house.
One of the categories of homeless people are street children. Street children in Morocco number approximately 30,000, a frightening statistic when you are aware of the damage such a circumstance inflicts upon children's development and future. Living in poverty and outside the school system, these children are easy targets for urban violence and homelessness, and whether drugs or sex, and have a future as dark as the streets they live on.
In Casablanca, the biggest city in Morocco, approximately 7,000 children live in this condition. The smokers are children who were abandoned to flee their sometimes violent and often difficult family environment.
In Marrakesh, one of the biggest souks in Morocco, the millions of tourists are impounding the pavement alone. Street children have also set up house there. Those street children sell small goods and basic services to pedestrians and moderates alike. With a few dirhams, those children can buy drugs. To alleviate the stress of their daily lives, they often sniff glue, cheap and easy to obtain drug or other hallucinogenic substances.
However, the source of this problem is easier to pinpoint. The poverty and unemployment affecting numerous Moroccan families and the lack of care and affection given to certain children in the family environment are some of the factors that force children to live on the streets.
We're going to turn towards the Moroccan civil society, represented by non-governmental organizations and associations, is trying to come to the aid of these children.
However, the number of children to care for is too high compared to the infrastructure and qualified personnel dedicated to the cause. Moreover, it's not easy to establish trust between the social and educational agents and the victims, the children, abandoned by their family and rejected by society, have lost all trust in adults and all hope for the future.
So, I'm going to give you a study. In a study entitled Of the Phenomenon of Street Children, the sociologist Shakib Ghasous said that more than 1,000 children are homeless in Casablanca alone. Those children, the study added, and do not only suffer because of poverty or low standards of living, but they are also frequently subjected to abuse, especially sexual.
As an example, Aisha, a 40-year-old girl who sells tissue packs in one of Casablanca's main streets, says she became homeless after a teenage neighbor of hers had raped her. I prefer to run away than to face the situation and tell my father, she told Al-Arabiyya. My mom is dead and my stepmother is very cruel, so there is no one to protect me.
Another example, for Abdullah, 12 years old, shoe polisher. Living in the street is much better than being a witness to the daily squabbles between his mom and dad. I couldn't take it anymore, especially that their fights are always concluded with beating me up and even kicking me out. So I ran away, he told Al-Arabiyya.
There is an undeniable connection between domestic violence and homelessness. Family violence can force individuals and families to live home suddenly, without a proper supports in place. This is particularly an issue for youth and women, especially those with children. Women who experience violence and or live in poverty are often forced to choose between abusive relationships and homelessness. Young people that are victims of sexual, physical, and psychological abuse often ends up experiencing homelessness.
Education is the most important requirement for everybody to get a fit job, ensuring a dignified life. Otherwise, the existence will be complicated for him or her. Without education, the homeless people, especially children, will not have the opportunity to acquire life skills.
One of the main reasons of homelessness is lack of education or training for homeless people themselves.
Homeless people are very poor, so they cannot afford the costs of their study. They just look for the life that they barely find food for themselves. Also, transportation is one of the barriers. A homeless family lives in a place away from school, and they are unstable in specific shelters.
In addition, the bad health for homeless people hinders them to go to schools. There are some of them who cannot walk on their feet, so they face a difficulty to go to their schools. Some of them are blind and alone. That means it is impossible of them that they go to take classes by themselves.
As everyone knows that encouragement is extremely crucial for everyone. Homeless people are losing encouragement to learn or at least develop themselves. Most of them live alone, so they don't have friends or anybody who encourages them. Consequently, they have the same feelings when they are learning or training or not.
Another cause of homelessness is addiction, where the vast majority of homeless people use drugs and alcohol. They suppose that drinking helps them to be glad and forget about their responsibilities towards themselves, even if that is for a short period of time.
Moreover, poor nutrition is one of the disease causes. Homeless people do not eat for a long time. Also, when they eat leftovers. For example, as we see them often, they collect their food from the trash, which means they feed on unhealthy food. Consequently, it's normal that they will have healthy problems.
You shall not attain righteousness until you spend out of what you love in the way of Allah. Allah knows whatever you spend. لن تنالوا البر حتى تنفقوا مما تحبون وما تنفقوا من شيء فإن الله به عليم.
Now I'm going to talk about the effects of homeless people. However, there are many effects of homeless people. The main one are the diseases. Some of them are permanent, such as cancer, and some of them are sexually transmitted. This is due to the fact that homeless people do not have access to hospitals and them not caring about their personal hygiene.
In addition to what you've said, Shams, violence is another effect. Violence is most of dangerous crime for all people because often it leads to death. There are many people in the world who suffer from violence, and a lot of people classify the homeless as sources of violence in the societies. Many homeless people commit crimes such as theft, murder, and kidnapping. And if we look at the crimes that happen, we find the most of crimes are committed by homeless people.
There are plenty of ways to improve the fate of homeless people, and homelessness needs a lot of work to be solved. It's not easily as some might expect, but also it's not impossible.
Since children under the age of 50 feel the effects of poverty, the most programs working with child care are youth development and highly relevant if necessary, and the overall cause to eradicate poverty. Volunteer in this field, work with kids to give them the short life skills like creative problem solving or creative thinking or using a computer.
Volunteers are needed to teach both adults and children, depending on the program. Volunteers teach students how to read languages like French, Spanish, or English, and basic information technology skills. For adults, this education provides them with the job skills to help them be a more marketable employee. For children, it encourages them to stay in school and improves their chances of getting a good job later in life.
Volunteers are needed to assist with providing basic health care in understaffed clinics, provide companionship to patients, and educate at-risk populations about health, nutrition, and sanitation.
In urban centers, poverty has created the problem with street children, and in turn a need for volunteers to plan recreational activities and serve as a companion for at-risk youth. Keep in mind that orphanages don't necessarily mean a place for children without families, but also children whose parents can't afford to properly take care of them.
For generous people, they should donate money for association to help the homeless people.
Narrated Hakim bin Hizam that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said that the upper hand is better than the lower hand. That is to say, he who gives in charity is better than him who takes it.
We should make them feel that we're from the same society and we've got the same rights.
To help the homeless people, we can't join in an association or an organization.
To my mind, the government and civil society should act now.
More than anything, when I see them, I go towards them and I listen their stories for knowing what they need.
If I see homeless people, I prefer to give them food because it's more important for them.
To sensitize the homeless people about the danger of drugs and alcohol.
I also suggest talking to the teenagers at schools about the dangers of homelessness and drugs. And also we should follow the way of Allah for making great society.
In conclusion, it is our duty to help homeless people in any way possible.